Ладно, помогите, пожалуйста, нам найти коллегу, который нам получит переводчик. Okay, and I would like for all of you to please welcome Miss Johnnette, who is going to speak about the different but not less valuable. Thank you, Miss Johnnette.
Okay, let's see if I can get this. I don't speak loud, but I'll try. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. So today I'm talking about special needs. And often we see special needs kids and we can tell maybe right away they're special needs. Or sometimes you can't. Sometimes they just look like everybody. But you know what we discover is that they're different. They're different in the way they learn. They may be different in the way they communicate with others, but they're no less valuable to our learning environment or society. In our learning environment, they're valuable because they teach our children within the learning environment. They teach them both to be more kind and to be understanding. And they teach them to have empathy. Am I too loud? Am I echoing? Okay. So we as educators may have to work a little harder with these kids than we do our neurotypical kids. But in the end, it's worth it. So first of all, you may ask, well, what qualifies me to talk about this? So let me explain why I may not be considered special needs, but I needed special attention. In first grade and in second grade, I couldn't read, I couldn't write, and math was a complete foreign language. Oi, прости, I didn't touch something. What did I not touch? Да. Ой, мама дорогая, это точно.
Сейчас точно. Сейчас.
Спасибо большое. Ой, все. Смотри, I told you I need special attention.
Так, сейчас.
I know, right? My screen looks a little different now. So, as a second grader, age 7 in the U.S., I couldn't read, I couldn't write. I remember math, looking at a page of math, and it looked as if you would look at Arabic or Greek or some other extremely foreign language. I recognized that they were numbers, but I did not know what to do with them. It made no sense to me whatsoever. So I spent spelling, it just wasn't happening. I spent a year in a special learning reading program of therapy. I walked on the little bar balance beam. I followed a ball to try to train my eyes. I worked with a teacher how to write. All sorts of different things for an entire year. At the end of that year, I could read. In fact, I ended up progressing to a massively high reading class, but still acquisition was very hard. Grammar was impossible. That's why, contrary to Miss Natalie, I don't translate. Okay, I don't translate in Russian. I can semi-speak, but grammar is still a very foreign concept at times. And so, but I took me until I got to college before I was officially diagnosed of, hey, you're dyslexic and you have dyscalculia and all these other disses. But once I understood, it helped me to understand myself and to not feel dumb. But I never really researched why or what. I understood what it was, but I didn't research it. I didn't have a reason to until, okay, let's try that again. Now what did you do? Please. 10 minutes. 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 10 See Italy all the time, wherever I go.
Please.
So, three reasons came along. And these two, well, this one, she's just a mess. But these three, they started speaking at 5 months old. The oldest one never stopped from noon to night. But this beauty in the middle, right here, she was a different situation. This was a birthday party with all the missionary kids. And I don't know if you see two faces that are not unhappy. Let's not count this little guy. He was just mad that mom walked away. But I don't know if you see one face here that looks like nothing makes sense. She's completely overwhelmed. This was a typical face at our house. And she could speak at 5 months, but oftentimes this is what we also got. We got screaming, and when it came to school, this is what we got. So around about the age of 13, we realized we're not getting anywhere, and so we went to a specialist, and these are some of the words they threw at us. So, anxiety. Yeah, we had that. Hyperacusis. That means she hears, but she hears too well, and it becomes painful. Even their own heartbeat or breathing can be a problem. Food aversion. Doesn't matter how much broccoli, how much cheese you put on it. Some kids cannot eat it. Rice, not happening. Dyslexia, Asperger's, auditory processing disorder. She hears very well, but she doesn't understand what she hears. ADD, they can't pay attention. ADHD, they can't sit still or pay attention. Dysgraphia, can't write. Dyscalculia, math, no way. Sensory processing disorder. Oh, hands are too tight. They're not tight enough. The lights are flashing. I can hear the lights. TV's off. I can still hear it. Those kind of things can be very distracting. And the scariest of all of these was encephalopathy. Sorry, Millie. Encephalopathy. It means basically, I'm sorry, we think your child is brain dead, but we don't know why. And that was the scary one. So after I got this one, I figured the rest of this was a piece of cake, and I had hope. What I learned was I started having to research because our therapist is saying, Johnnette, how have you done it all these years? And I don't know. So I started learning about autism and dyslexia, reading everything I could get my hands on. So some of the things I learned about autism and Asperger's, that it's a spectrum, that it looks different in girls than in boys. They researched boys, but they didn't research girls. And it looks totally different in girls and oftentimes goes completely unnoticed. It runs in families. I have a niece. She hummed her entire life, and we finally figured out when she was in college, she has Asperger's. It's not curable or something they're going to outgrow. If they say they have Asperger's or on the autism spectrum, they will improve, but it will always be there. They and you will always have to recognize that it's there and you have to deal with it. That they have intense interests and obsessions. One particular person I know, their interest was the Titanic. I will not go on a cruise because I know too much. Their obsessions can become passions, and the passions can lead, sorry about that, to careers. Did I do that? Okay, this is special needs, and this is me. I don't know what I did this time. I promise. I don't think I touched anything. Maybe I did. So oftentimes, they will take something and they will become so passionate with it that it just has to lead to something else. We actually have some incredible, thank you. Нет. До сих пор не работает. Sorry. Okay. So their passions, they become extremely passionate. They know everything, and they talk about it a lot. And they will eventually, oftentimes, use that to go into a certain field. But autism in girls looks totally different. Boys tend to act out. Girls do what they call masking or mirroring. In other words, they will find a girl that they admire, and they will start mimicking that girl. The way they dress, the way they talk, the way they stand, because they cannot comprehend certain social cues, and so they watch. I have a picture of my oldest daughter watching my very youngest one because she couldn't figure out how to smile for a picture. Very common, and so that makes it very hard to see. Girls do not do a stimming, which boys tend to do, the flapping, the spinning, although some do. But they tend to just have a lot of anxiety and internalize. They may talk to themselves, do other things, but they internalize more. Their communication, they have exceptional vocabularies, exceptional. And in fact, sometimes they're known as little professors, but for boys, but the girls are even more so. They will speak to you way out of their age limit. You know, what you would think they would speak. It's very common, and especially in girls. They're very difficult to deal their emotions, so sometimes their emotions are just all over the place. Sometimes they totally freak out. Sometimes, Miss Julie, like what you said, they talk about they don't like the way moms have emotions because they don't understand them. They don't understand somebody else's emotions. Why are you acting like that? I don't know. They just don't understand it. Sometimes they're just socially awkward. They seem very shy. So basically what happens, because they mirror and they tend to look like the other girls, it's very hard to recognize. The doctors are like, I don't know. And so eventually they're more likely to be diagnosed if they have a brother who's autistic than if they don't. So that's why it took us years to get our children diagnosed. The other thing I learned is that they're extremely intelligent. So this is what I was described when I found out my children have Asperger's, is this. They said, the majority of the population of the world, our IQ is right in here in the hundreds. When you drop down this way, you end up in what they like to call I forgot the word, sorry. they tend non-functioning. And you think, well, we're up here. Well, the problem is specifically with the Asperger's, which is the higher end of the spectrum, you tend to end up with IQs in this area. So when they have an IQ, I was told, of 130 to 140, it also presents a problem because they don't interact well. And they say, oh, do they make developmentally equal friends? I don't have 140 IQ, but I can tell you it's hard to find people who do. So it's hard for them to develop friends. Usually they don't even have friends. Sometimes it's one, sometimes two, sometimes none at all. And so a lot of times they're okay with that. So it's not exactly a problem because it actually has caused more stress. What I learned about dyslexia, look, we also don't outgrow it. It also runs in families. My family has many people that are dyslexic, a lot. So, and we don't outgrow it. We learn to cope with it. It took me until I was in college to learn tools to cope with my dyslexia. I actually passed university. So it can be done. It can be done. It just makes it twice as hard. We have to work harder than your average student. This is sometimes what you will see, what a dyslexic, I should say, we see as dyslexics. Sometimes we see in various ways. So some people, this is your actual, some people see it in different flip-flop directions. Some people can see completely mirrored. I still to this day will grade paces with 2 fingers because B's and D's will still sometimes flip or my eyes will skip. So I have to be very careful with that. But sometimes we see this. You take a child and you say, oh, they're not reading. Let's go have their eyes checked because they're rubbing their eyes. And they'll have 20/20 vision, but, or as you guys say, 100%, right? But they see different. It could be the letters move. I have a child that told me, Miss Johnnette, the letters are moving. and I immediately knew what she was talking about. Sometimes they're just blurry. Sometimes they just get all mixed up randomly. And then some dyslexics see this. They only see pieces. So dyslexia is the language acquisition. It makes it hard to recognize vocabulary. It's as if I give you Chinese and I ask you without any knowledge to read a text to me. Because for them, this is what they're reading. And sometimes it's very difficult and painstaking to read. I read extremely fast when I'm reading a novel, and I see a video in my head. I see a whole movie. But when I come to a text for a textbook, it takes me twice as long to read it because there's no movie in textbooks. Sorry, that should be a prerequisite. Math is also a language. It's also a foreign language. For many people, sorry guys, but once it gets up to these really weird letters and numbers, and yeah. Kids, they can work a complete algebraic problem, but you get down to the basic addition and subtraction at the very bottom, and they're lost. Multiplication tables, no, that was a painstaking process at my house to teach my children. We used stories, we used artwork, anything we can to get them visual. So the one thing I learned is that dyslexia has many different effects. I have no concept of time, as Mr. Vitali knows. I walk into the classroom, I have no idea what time of the day it is. I don't know when the bells go off, whether it's a bell to start class, start break, finish break, or what lesson we're on. Kids ask me, I say, I don't know, guys, Mr. Vitali, because I don't know. It causes a problem with memory difficulties. Short-term memory is very hard, takes us forever. I had to learn a verse this summer for my training, and I had to do hand signals because I could not remember the words. They made no sense to my head. I knew it, I understood it, but to memorize it is a totally different story. Dates, phone numbers, no, I'm thankful to God every day for the iPhone. Writing was always a problem for me until I hit university when the laptop was invented. That was an act of God. Because then I started touch typing and I could type and it bypasses the dyslexic part of the brain that says, how does that word look like? How does that letter look like? So I can touch type. Listening, sometimes, some kids, especially my daughter, listening was a problem, so we went through various therapies to help with that. They may not, but vowels tend to all sound the same until you're trained really well as a dyslexic to hear the difference. I still have a complication with some of the Russian vowels. They still sound exactly the same. I'm like, yeah, I'm not hearing it. So spelling is something that has to be really worked on, as well as reading. They lose their place, their eyes skip. Motor control, they have a hard time holding their pencil. Big pencils, little pencils, anything. Sometimes I've noticed some of my guys will have little bitty pencils. It actually helps. So different reasons. It just affects the whole area of learning. One thing I've discovered between autism and dyslexia similarities is we're very visual. If you give us a word like table, we see a picture. You may, especially during a spelling test, start seeing letters. We've seen that table, and now we have to search in our brain for the word that matches. I never understood this until I was in therapy with my daughter, and the therapist said, when you were in school, you were the last one to answer questions. I go, yeah, I was. She was like, because they ask you questions like, who was the first president of the U.S.? And she said, you just saw a picture. I was like, that picture that hangs up in the schoolroom of George. And she goes, now you're searching for a name. I go, George Washington. She was like, exactly, that's what happens. All of the classes already answered the question, but you're still searching for the name to connect to the picture. That's what happens. So we don't think in words, we think in pictures. Oftentimes, if you ask an autistic child or a dyslexic child to name off something, the first thing they're going to see is picture after picture after picture of I actually have a photographic memory for faces, not names. So if I will know your face, if I see you walking down the street one time, I will always remember your face, but I don't remember where I know you from. So if I say I don't know you, that's why. I've seen your face before, at least once. So with all of that, we have sensory overload. Our senses are on high alert. If our t-shirt is mom didn't use fabric softener or the wrong kind of fabric softener, or there's a tag, praise God, they no longer do that. If the pants are itchy, all of those things are just too much for the senses. It causes them to shut down, even scream. It can be everything from the lighting in the room to the noise in the kid next to them. Could be the kid's just breathing. I've heard, Mom, she's breathing my air before from the back seat. So this causes what we call stimming, we've talked about. We all stim, actually, in a certain way. It's just autistic kids tend to do it above because they do everything that way. So stimming could be anywhere from picking your nails, biting your nails, picking your face, picking at clothing, wiggling, flapping of the hands. I had a very stressful situation. I didn't realize I was on the phone, and I didn't realize that I was slinging my hand. So yes, I have discovered in the process that I have tendencies toward Asperger's as well. But fidgeting, tapping, cracking your knuckles. We have a spinner in my class, and I tell him frequently to stop spinning. Chewing, tapping your pencils, all of those things that oftentimes we do even as adults. It's something to control our anxiety. But for autistic kids specifically, it's above board, and it alerts that there's something. If you see children excessively stimming, know that they are under stress. There is anxiety, and they're under stress, and you need to find the source of that anxiety. Because when they're stimming, a lot of times they are not learning. Now, that doesn't mean they're not completely learning, because some stimming could be distracting their mind from other things. But when it's excessive, you'll know it. You'll know it because you can't get them to stop. Like I said earlier, my niece was a hummer. And you would say, Robin, it should stop. But the more stress she was under, the louder the humming grew. What can we do to help? First of all, we can get earplugs. Earplugs are great. They help decrease the noise. Some kids that are super sensitive, with specifically with the lower on the spectrum of autism they go, the less ability they have to control that. So complete noise canceling earphones, especially during break, that's what I think I'm going to go get. Because during break, it's very noisy. Also, something called a weighted lap pad. It's like we have weighted blankets. It actually, what it does, it helps like them to feel their legs. I know that sounds odd, but for some people, they can't feel their legs move, and they're constantly getting that tapping, and they can't think of anything else but their leg moving. So the weighted blanket helps to ground them in a sense and gives them a bit of comfort, like the old comfort blankets. This is what I would really like to requisition for all 25 students. It's called a wiggle seat. It actually helps them to feel like there's movement without bugging or breaking a seat. We went through 4 stools in my house in one school year because my wiggler broke the seats. So this helps them make that feeling of wiggling, that feeling of movement without actual movement. What can we control at no cost? Because I don't think they would requisition 25 of those seats. What we can do is we can change the lighting. We can be aware. Some kids' natural lighting is intense. We move them to another section of the room. Maybe there's not enough light. Maybe the overhead lights are glaring on them. Rearranging them, moving them to another location. Keeping the noise down, even your own voice. And I didn't put this on the slide, but this is called a phonics phone. You put it up to your ear and you very quietly speak in it, and you can hear yourself. I needed to introduce this to one of my students in my classroom, and so I put it on my desk, and he saw it, and he said, "Oh, it's an ear trumpet." He just learned about ear trumpets in his paces. And so now he was a talker, and he sits now quietly, and he uses that to speak, and he's no longer interrupting the person next to him because he can hear himself, and so we don't hear him over the entire class. The other thing is limiting distractions. If you have a child that's excessively distracted in this, especially if they're dyslexic or on the autism spectrum, putting them in the corner, not in the corner, but in the space where there's the least distractions, making sure they're not in the pathway of the door, which is huge, or in the pathway of the scoring table, so there's less movement around them. The minimal movement, the minimal distractions around them will help decrease their stress and, in turn, your stress. Yeah. What else can we do to help? These are some therapies that we used. The funny thing is, brain integration therapy, basically it made pathways that were missing in my daughter's brain, in her corpus callosum, between one side of the brain to the other. And basically, it's a bit of what I went through as a child and didn't know it. It's a lot of cross-crawling, those type of things. Then our therapist in Texas, a little bitty tiny town in Texas, used the Mosketova method. Svetlana Mosketova is a Russian doctor who came up with a reflex integration. And it basically, if a child is reflexes as a baby, you know, when you touch the side of their face, they go toward the bottle or the breast. Well, if they are still doing that at 5, they're not going to read because their eyes just keep going right off the page. So they take the reflexes that they are not integrated into their system and they rework those reflexes. And it has been tremendous help for us. And then the listening program is a special computerized music, classical music, and when you put the earphones in, you hear something over here and something over here and something over here, and it drives you absolutely mad the first time you listen to it, but when you go back the other direction like you're supposed to, you're okay. And it actually changed my daughter from screaming, "Stop talking, I'm reading," or "That's not, why did you say that about me?" And you didn't say anything about her. Or having to repeat a sentence in the exact pattern that you had already said it. She no longer had to do that because she went through the listening program and it improved her ability to listen. My absolute favorite is Brain Gym because, hello, it's free on YouTube. And these exercises I use with my students. I have some called brain buttons, these right here, where I tell my students to turn on their brain, and we use different little reflexes to help them turn on their brain before they are going to take a test. I had one student looked at me, thought I was crazy last year when I introduced it to her, and now she looks at me and says, "I'm turning on my brain," and it's probably a good thing. So, yes, you can get these on YouTube, and they actually have exercises already pre-programmed, so you just turn it on, and you can do the exercises with the kids. Really great, really, really helpful. So I want to introduce you, after my kids grew up, I started working with dyslexic students. This is one of my favorites, Alaya. This is our very first lesson. She told me in 2 seconds, "I don't want to learn to read." Then you can see this is in her home. She is the only daughter with 4 boys. And she had an audience that day and told me in 15 minutes, "I'm leaving here like a boss." So I realized real quick we had to change our location. So we moved to our house, and I realized that she needs movement. So I took the letters that we were working on, you can see here, and her sight words, and we hopped, we skipped, we did everything we could to learn those sounds by repetitive. Repetition is the key especially with dyslexics, you have to repeat, repeat, repeat. You may be repeating the letter A 15 million times in the next year, but that's the only way they'll get it. But the other exception is you have to give them all sounds at once. If you say today, A says ah, and then tomorrow you say it says A, you're lost. Dyslexics cannot comprehend that. They have to have everything at once. So one of the things we do is we use color-coded tiles. This is the board that I use to teach my kids and my dyslexic children. You can make your own colored tiles, or you can do what I do with my students. I use colored pencils. We take the paste that they're working on, and we have them, I make them put the consonants in blue, the vowels in red, and special sounds that they're working on in a different color. With this particular one, we also give rules. We need rules. We have no clue. I started teaching my kids with a Becca, and they say, A, as in pray. That's great and wonderful and pray, but we will never see it and stay, say, and may. It doesn't exist. It makes no sense. We need to know why. So we need to know a rule. Ah, two-letter ah, that you may use at the end of an English word. Yeah, because there's another one. Okay? Very visual. Use clues. If you're teaching these homophones, they look exactly alike to us. Because remember, the letters get mixed up. So if you can use an arrow for there as in location, and then make this I into a person, we now understand that that's two different words. Same piece and piece. Okay? Use as many visual cues and colors as possible. Let them draw themselves. They're very visual. Let them do it themselves. I have one student who actually draws the words out as he's spelling them and using the letters themselves in artistic fashion, and he understands. Like I said, visual clues everywhere. And teaching exceptions. So instead of teaching these in 3 different rounds in 3 different days, because then you tell them, oh, wait, there's an exception, and they're like, no, there's not. So you have to teach them all at one time. C uses the soft sound, like ka, right? A, O, and U, before A, O, and U. So teaching them these visually, you see we've got a visual cue, we've got colors, and we've got all 3 rules at once, and now we can handle it. Now we know how to use it. My favorite, not the way ACE, sorry, in the PACES, I have to use this with my dyslexic students because otherwise it makes no sense, because we get those exceptions and we say, no, you just told me last week that said something else. So when we say R as in car, then they understand, okay, there's 3 sounds, now how do I use it? So teaching them the rules is very explicit. Again, like I said, yeah, what's that? How do we use that? Well, this is 2-letter ah that we cannot use at the end of an English word, ah that we may use at the end of an English word, oi that we may not use at the end of the English word, oi that we may use at the end of an English word. That was, even as I learned it when I was teaching my children, was a revelation and improved my spelling as well. Because when we have something to hang our hat on, we now understand. So instead of saying the same sound over, you've given us a rule, and now we can visualize it. Otherwise, it's just 2 identical sounds, and we don't know what to do with it. My absolute favorite, it's on requisition, Miss Olga and Miss Julie. These are reading strips. Dyslexics have various colors that actually change the appearance of a page. You don't go with the color they want, but it's an overlay. they have full page overlays or small ones. I prefer this one, especially with the little ones, especially if their eyes skip. Right now, I'm using a plastic ruler that I found at Comas for one of my children. And I bought like 5 different colors, and then we just try to see which one works. It's not about a matter of what is your favorite color. It's a matter of I put it on the page, and either the letters stop moving or they get brighter. It literally, and for lack of a better term, makes the letters jump out at you. And we're like, oh, now I see it. So this, it actually also decreases eye anxiety. I have one student who was rubbing her eyes, the letters were moving. We started using this along with some spelling rules, and last week she made 100 for the first time. So allow them to use their imagination when they're working on their paces or spelling. Allow these children will learn. I'm an example. We will learn if we're given the right tools, if you were given patience. If you ask a dyslexic child a question, give them room to answer, because they have to take it from a picture, move it across to their brain, another side of their brain, to get it out of their mouth. Be patient. They will get there. They will have the answer. You can tell if they don't know the answer. Just give it time. So they learn in their own way and at their own time. The more you push, the more apprehensive they get, the more anxiety they get, and the harder it is to learn. So use your imagination. You know, if you can't think of a way to teach them a certain concept, draw it out. Think of a way, find it. Look on the internet. Some of these are from Pinterest. So we're very visual, and the more, and sometimes very auditory. So giving it both. If they can't understand a scientific concept, a social studies concept, giving them a video. My kids learned Russian history through YouTube. It was a godsend. So if you're wondering about the child at the beginning with the very blank look on her face, what we sometimes call the autistic stare, this is her. College, she had a 4.0, and today she is a monitor in our school. They can be taught. This child was told when she was 13, I was told that she had encephalopathy and may never learn. When we first started therapy, we could put 3 or 4 words on a page. At the end of therapy, she beat her therapist, who had a master's degree and had been a home educator, in Scrabble with a word that the therapist had never seen before. And she was like, I don't know this word, but she found it. And one reason is we use audiobooks. Audiobooks are our friend because it takes us a lot less time to listen than it does to read. So, especially for her. So please, use your imagination. Use whatever electronic devices, anything you can find, but give them that room to grow and to use their own abilities, because they're there. You just have to cipher through them sometimes. And some of our greatest doctors, airline traffic controllers, they're autistic because of that ability to zoom in and stay focused. I would much rather have an autistic doctor doing a brain surgery for 12 hours than someone who is, a little ADD. So just saying. So thank you, guys. Any questions? Do we have time for questions?
Yes, we will have some 5 minutes for questions, yeah. Yes, please go ahead. Okay, use the microphone. Zoom.
Thank you. As a teacher, I wanted to ask for an advice, maybe, because I believe that in my group there is a child that is on a spectrum, but I think his mom just tries to, I don't know how to explain it, but she doesn't want to believe that her child might be autistic. So what do I do as a teacher? How do I talk to a parent that has this child with special needs, but she doesn't want to, accept
It's
it?
very hard as a parent when you hear your child has autism. You think, oh, what did I do wrong? Did I do this wrong? Did I do that wrong? Oh, my child's life is over. And I think the problem is education. People don't understand. And I think that's one way I have a different perspective on it. My sister is the other way. My sister's an educator, and she cannot comprehend, will not accept that that I'm dyslexic. My children are dyslexic. Even my niece that has autism. None of us, in her opinion, should have Asperger's. We're fine. And the reason for that is because that means that something's defective, and it's not true. It's just our brain works differently. And maybe I have a different perspective on that, having the fact that I am dyslexic. When I was given that tag, you're dyslexic, I was like, ah. And that's what, especially if they're neurotypical, sorry, that's our lingo. If a person is neurotypical, they cannot accept that their child thinks differently. But it means that everything's and yeah, some kids may be on that end that we talked about where even they are learning. But quick story, I have a friend whose son is he's nonverbal autistic, and he actually has a job. He, in his hometown in Houston, they have a whole group of autistic kids that are nonverbal and are just what they call low functioning in society. And they actually the parents go around and collect all of the paper that needs to be shredded, and those kids shred, and they love it. Why is that important? Because, today we need shredded paper, right? So these kids are actually making money doing a job that for some people would be tedious, but it's a necessity. And I think I've had that conversation with a teacher, with a parent, and I said, I know that you don't want to, I know that in your opinion they don't have this, but they have these tendencies. And this child is under stress. They're stimming in class. They're spinning around in circles. Could you provide earplugs? Yeah. And that was it. So the only thing you can do is understand that they may not accept it and just say, okay, don't say, oh, I think your kid is autistic. You can say, I see problems, and this is what your child is doing. We may need to have this child tested.
Ms. Johnnette, if you please allow me to maybe comment a little bit from the administrator's point of view. I understand that you're a teacher, and so the positive thing is your mama is not there in your classroom. Do whatever you think is best for that child, okay? And so what I heard today from Ms. Johnnette, and so it's great to have conferences like that, and we invite people with experience. In the adjoining room, we have a professional psychologist speaking. There will be another session, but still, it's only you, a teacher, can influence that child in that learning center. So you do what you think is best. Learn more, study more, talk to Ms. Johnnette, talk to somebody else in your city, and little by little, just when the child shows the progress, mom will be more appreciative, and maybe she would listen more to you, okay, to your point of view. Unless this is just really a very, very critical situation, and that needs to be addressed together with the administration.
Just real quick, the label isn't for the parent. The label's for the child. So when I get the label autistic, I can look and go find more people like me, and even if it's not just autistic or Asperger's or anything, I can find and I can go, oh, that's me. And being seen and being able to find those little life hacks to help my brain is very, very incredible, because the kid might not realize that, oh, this is what's triggering the stress. But when they're on the internet finding more information, they'll be like, somebody else will say on the internet or on Reddit or Pinterest or anything, they say, oh yeah, I just turned off the light and it made me feel so much better. And they're like, oh, I I have a really bright light. Maybe I should just switch to the lamp. And then their homework, their just at-home life, any life will just improve. So the label is not for the parent. The label is for the child. And I think a lot of people forget that when they're going through the whole labeling process.
Yeah.
So.
But my question wasn't about labeling a child, if I may say that. It was like, should I, as a teacher, push in some way a parent to, like, you know, go into therapy or like a diagnosis or anything like that?
If you feel,
is it my responsibility as a teacher?
it's your responsibility to let them know what's going on as far as your child is not learning. This is what I'm seeing. When I got to therapy with my child and I said, this is what I'm seeing, she's not reading, she's not doing this, she can't do this, she can't do that. And they were like, okay. And so when they finally told me what was going on, that it's something they could help with, not fix, but help, I realized, okay, it's not me. And this is what these parents are saying. Oh, you're saying that something's wrong with me, that I did something wrong. I laid my head down on the desk and I cried because I realized I didn't screw up my kids. I didn't mess them up. It's just that's the way God wired them. And so when we realize, when we see a kid that's having struggling excessively hard, like I have one child that in my classroom, she was not learning. I had tried everything. And so I went out and bought the ruler thinking maybe this will help, and it clicked. And that's when I understood we're dealing with something else. Am I gonna go to that father? We're gonna wait and see, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to be defensive because it is scary. It's a scary diagnosis when you tell them their kid is autistic. It's very scary. So, but only if it's something that is to the point where they're not learning.
Okay. Yeah, Ms. Johnnette, thank you very much. So thank you for bringing this very important issue and topic to the light, because I believe we all at this or that point of our career face the challenges that I described here today in this session. Okay, it's the lunchtime, and I would like to invite Ms. Helen to give us the directions, please.
Yeah, we have lunch, 45 minutes, second floor, restaurant.
Okay, and since this is the buffet, the sooner you get there, more food will be available, okay? You hurry. Okay, we'll see you back in 45 minutes. And again, so we have the split sessions